We are so happy to have Adia Victoria back in the studios. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
This is, it's funny, you get just assaulted with music running a radio station, and it's times like these that you actually get to relax into a record because the person's coming in. Silences, great record.
Thank you.
There's zero filler on that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You'll take it.
Yeah. We erred on the side of lean.
Yeah. I want to. I also want to congratulate you. You just were awarded the Holly Prize from the Songwriters Hall of Fame, named for Buddy Holly.
Yes.
That's kind of great.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's beyond
It's
cool.
cool.
I mean, the funny thing about Buddy Holly is, as influential as he was, he only would have been bigger if he hadn't died in that plane crash.
Yeah.
He did the first multi-tracking of anybody and wrote some really classic songs. So I was really jazzed when I saw that, just for you.
Yeah, it was a huge honor. He was definitely a revolutionary and a visionary, and to be honored with a prize named after him. It's very humbling. It kind of came out of nowhere. They told me about it when I was riding in a van in Illinois. And it's like, wow, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. You are really interesting to me because so many people fight genre,
Mm-hmm.
and you really want to own the genre that you're in, but you also want to define it on your own standards. You are a blues artist.
Correct. Yeah, and I don't necessarily see myself as trying to own it as much as inhibit it, or is it inhabit? Inhabit it. I always get those two confused. For me, the blues, it's when I make my music, I guess it's me claiming I'm trying to put this in a way that doesn't sound arrogant.
No, honestly, you're an artist and you've worked really hard. You've earned your arrogance if it comes off that way.
It's my inheritance, as a black woman in the South, especially. It's like these four women, like Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, Victoria Spivey, that came before me and blazed these trails. It's me just saying, like, it's my turn to walk and continue the work that they did.
You mentioned those names, and when you went in to record this record, you had pictures of people that inspired you hung on the wall.
I did. I had Billie Holiday, Fiona Apple, Nina Simone, Jessie Zazu. Geez, I'm trying to remember who else, but that was the long and short of it. Yeah, and I had them up there because the industry that I'm in, it's so male dominated, and I felt like I just needed to have this feminine space, like these women who have shaped my life and my artistic sensibilities, kind of just like with me in solidarity. A lot of the blues that gets recorded today, it feels like, there are like really easy shortcuts. Mm-hmm. That people just sort of, okay, this riff is the blues, so I'll throw that in there. Yes.
And what you're doing is so non-stereotypical.
Right.
It feels like it's more about, the intent or where it came from than about any particular riff or rhythm. Right.
And, it's not to say that I don't enjoy, like, classic traditional blues. I love it. I bump it all the time. But the blues in its formation was very radical. It was a direct challenge to the status quo. And that's the spirit that I want to move forward and bring to the fore when I write, and I call myself a blues artist. The women that were the first rock stars of the blues, these were women that were one generation removed from slavery. So the first thing that they did when they had a little bit of power, a little bit of autonomy, was they owned all of their humanity. And it terrified all the power structures, from the white power structure to the black church. Everybody was terrified. And I believe that seed is what drives the blues. Like, that's the work that the blues still needs to do in 2019.
So you are so smart, you're so literate, you're so well-read. And I have the feeling, I always think that there are two kinds of artists. The kind of artist that says, well, I'm going to write the song, but then that's like half the work, and the listener finishes the song in the listening.
Right.
And while I don't think you want to cut the listener out, I think that you're so intentional about what you're trying to say about these songs that you probably care a great deal that people understand the meaning behind them, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about Dope Queen Blues?
For sure. And it's funny, my mom actually, I live with my mother in Nashville, and she came and sat in my bed one morning when I was waking up, and she was like, you might, on the next record, leave a little bit more room for the audience in the songs. And, just like, oh, it's me. But she's right. So Dope Queen, I wrote that song. It was my way of processing, my 20s, when I was living in Atlanta, and I was making quite a bit of money telemarketing and just blowing it. I had no future plan for myself. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to dress well, and I didn't care about anything else. And I was proud of that. I think it was kind of the natural reaction of having been pulled so far as a child by the church into this kind of, is it the word ascetic kind of strict, isolated upbringing. And then when I had freedom and I had money, I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to revel in my humanity. And Dope Queen is a song about that. It's just about being like, hey, I'm lost and I'm doing damage to myself in vain, but I'm going to make it sound really fun.
So I guess you found your true self somewhere in the middle.
I don't know. I don't know what my true self is. I think that self is as true as any. So I don't think I have one true self. I have a lot of selves.
Yeah. But you were at least grounded by, it's funny to say this, but you were grounded by the guitar.
Right.
I mean, that gave you the path for expression that you were looking for. You tried acting, you tried dancing, a lot of different things.
Yeah, the guitar was this one thing that I could do on my lonesome, on my own. Like I could sit in my room with nobody else and not need anything else and just play that guitar. So the guitar kind of became my primary relationship. It became my baseline, and it did. It settled me down at a time in my life when I was 21 where I was kind of spiraling, and it gave me something to live for, to survive for.
Yeah. So just to go back and sort of set you free from what your mother said, you can be very intentional. People are still going to find themselves in your songs.
That's what I told her. I was like, I think that people are smart enough that they can, I think it's relatable stuff.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I was really fascinated about this record, just the behind the scenes stuff that we never get to see, is that you have a very specific existence. Like you and I came from completely different worlds. Completely, I feel like I've had some struggles here and there, but, they're not your struggles.
For sure.
And I think all human beings feel like they struggle. The struggles are of different sizes. We all carry something. But Aaron Dessner of The National,
right?
Like he reaches out to you because he wants to produce that record. And I'm assuming that he's kind of in my boat in the sense that he had a very different experience growing up than you did.
Right.
And, the things, like I'm sure that he was attracted to you as an artist. But the coming together of the two of you, I think had to be, like I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall and see that relationship develop. What was that like?
It was very organic. It was surprisingly so, refreshingly. He had produced work for a few other acts on my label, Canvasback, at Atlantic. He'd worked with Frightened Rabbit and Alt J. So there was already a rapport set up between his people and my people. And he wrote my A&R gentleman at Atlantic, Steve Robofsky, and it was like, hey, what's going on with Adia? Like, is she starting a second record? Like, he's basically like, these are things that I enjoyed about her first record. Like, these are the strengths that I noticed, and I'd really be interested in helping her continue to tell these characters' stories. And he reached out to me, wrote me a letter, and I read it, and it was honest. It was true. It wasn't like, I'm going to make you a big star. It was just like, I want to make art with you. And believe it or not, like that was the first time in the industry that anyone had taken that approach with me. It's just like, I would like to make art with you. And I was like, okay. So we went up to his studio in Hudson, me and my creative partner and lead guitarist, Mason Hickman. We had a bundle full of demos that we'd been working on. And we went up to Hudson and we worked on my song "Bring Her Back," and we grew it from this song that I wrote on acoustic guitar into this like iced out kind of like trip hop R&B thing, and it was just like beyond my expectations. And I left there and I was like, yeah, I want to make a record with you. I want to make this record with you.
You have been quoted as saying that you got something from Aaron Dessner that you had not found in anyone in Nashville.
Community. He gave me the space to play, and he never told me like, I want you to make this kind of record, or I think we should make this kind of vibe. Like, I was in a weird place when I was in his studio. I was in the throes of grief. My best friend Jessie Zazu from Those Darlings, she'd passed a few months earlier. So I was still coming down out of that and coming out of seclusion. And so I was weird, and I was dealing with a lot of emotions and like, you know, trying to be normal and seem normal and go into the studio and track with the band. And Aaron basically was just like, hey, you know, whatever we capture, we can work with it. Like, don't feel like you have to limit yourself. And he was secure enough in himself to allow me to be weird. And he introduced me to some of his friends. I met Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. He played some synth on a few of my tracks, and he brought in great string players, and he made me feel accepted, even in all of my weirdness.
I think he probably wanted your weirdness, right? I mean,
oh, yeah.
I mean, that's why he reached out.
Yeah, no one wants like a well-adjusted Adia. She's boring. Like, that's me talking to my accountant. Like, she has no place in the studio. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking before the mics went on about, you know, the goal of the music business most of the time is just conformity.
Right.
You know, replicate what's worked in the past. And I thought it was really telling in a New York Times piece that Dessner was quoted, and I'm going to shorten this down. These aren't his exact words, but he said that it was really clear that this project with you needed to be less about melody and harmony and more about story.
Right. Right. You know, that was one of the first things I told him when we first started working on the record. I was like, you know, I want to err on the side of a sparse. If there's a sound that doesn't need to be there, like, get it out of there, because this is a young woman's story. Like, we're telling stories here, and the music should serve the story. And I didn't want to feel like I was like a background singer to this huge production. You know, I told him, I was like, I want you to be comfortable with the ugly sides, the uncomfortable sides, the awkward sides of like all of these characters, and sonically like reproducing those. And I think that he did a grade A job on that.
It still sounds full. You know, it's not like a dirt floor
right
kind of approach.
Right.
You know, I just think that the whole thing is fascinating. Another quote that I guess early on you told him that you had envisioned Billie Holiday in a particular way.
Yeah. I told him he asked me what I was listening to and who my influences were, and I told him that I wanted to see what it would sound like if Billie Holiday got lost in a Radiohead song. Because those are like two of my favorite people. I love Billie's like jagged, throaty vocal delivery, and I love just the sonic landscapes that Radiohead, like those icy British boys, create. And I was like, you know what? Let's just bring the two of these together. I imagine it was like when the person who invented like Reese's peanut butter cups was like, chocolate is good, peanut butter is good. What happens when you bring them together?
That's great. You know, I hate like reading quotes on the radio, so I just pulled out words from some of the quotes that Aaron Dessner had about you: improvisation, weird experiments, futuristic alchemy, subversive approach.
Smells funny.
Okay, should I, you know, as an interviewer, should I follow up with that?
It's just every time I see him now, like we play shows together, and like I'm coming off the stage, I'm like all sweaty and stinky, and I'm just like, sorry, I stink. And,
yeah, inside joke. Yeah, we've got it now. That's got to be so much fun opening up for the National.
It's great.
Yeah, it's fabulous. So again, I want everybody to, you know, understand what's behind the song. And in the case of The Needle's Eye, you were actually inspired on that one from reading.
Yes.
there's a very definite literary link here.
Yes. So I had been reading the letters and diaries of Virginia Woolf, and then like her autobiography, or not auto, but her biography. Because I tried to read her book, The Waves, and I didn't get it. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this. So I started reading more about her, and I learned about her just like bone crushing anxiety, and how when she was little, her family's home had these mounted like deer heads with like the antlers on them, and they were in her room as a little girl, and they would terrify her. And then one night her mom came in and she wouldn't sleep. Her mom came in and put like sheets over all the heads, and like she was like, there, darling, now you can go to sleep. And Virginia was like, and I would just like stare at the shadows and like be even more terrified somehow, because not seeing the thing is worse than seeing the thing. And that spoke to me about like my anxiety, just of you can't see this thing that's like attacking you from within. And so the needle's eye is kind of me trying to put an eye on my terror, my fears, and facing my demons, and at the end just being like, come on, you want to play? Let's play.
And you're doing it a little bit differently live?
You know, my vocal delivery is different. I feel like I just, you chew on the song for a year, it just changes in your mouth.
What's it like to put together an album knowing that you're going to be living with that and performing it for an extended period of time?
The first album, I really didn't understand, the level of commitment that goes into releasing an album and then like touring behind it. Like you're tied to it, which isn't a bad thing. But I mean, with this album, I knew that I was going to have to grow with this art. Like I was intentional about that. And I have to leave myself open to my art. I never want to play the same show twice. Like I never want to just like I have a switch that I turn on and off, on and off. Like I want to be present for that song. And for the people that are there. So for me, I guess I just have to push myself to remain emotionally available to these songs and to the people that are there with me every night, and let it grow, and not try and have like my hands around its throat and say like it has to be this certain thing.
It's funny that artistic approach you mentioned. I get the sense that everything about you is so deliberate, but that doesn't stop things from coming to you in odd ways at odd times. That song started in the shower,
right? It did, in Iceland.
In Iceland,
yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah, we. It was my I was on a European tour for Beyond the Bloodhounds. And we had just like finished some insane touring. Like we played a show in Hamburg in Germany, and then we didn't get back to our hotel till 2 a.m. And then we had a taxi cab coming to pick up the band to take us to the airport to fly to Copenhagen, connect at 4 a.m. and then land in Reykjavik later that morning. And then just like, I think that I pushed my body to like its boundaries of just like, where are you? Like I couldn't locate myself. Like Iceland, like you're in Iceland, and just like riding across Iceland and from the airport into Reykjavik and like looking around and just feeling totally displaced and like dissolved into my surroundings. And I just had a huge anxiety attack. We had to play a KEXP session later that night, and I just like unraveled in the shower. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. Like I gotta get out of here. And then I was like, I feel like I'm in a needle's eye. Like I'm just very contained right now. And I felt like I was in a prison. And then in that moment when I was like, the water was washing on me, I was like, well, you have two choices. Like you can go mad right now, you can go insane, or you can channel this. And I wrote the song.
That's a pretty brilliant piece of self-therapy.
Yeah. I can't afford the real thing. It's our greatest healthcare system in the world.
Well, and you have been very open about, there being many sides to you, who you are. And, Adia Victoria on the road, you've been so driven that you've like sacrificed your health at times.
Right. Yeah, I get sick. You battle depression, you battle anxiety, but the thing that's helped me most, like not to sound like totally like cheesy or cliche, but meditation's helped me quite a bit. Just learning how to go with the flow, man, and not having to control people and situations around you. Just like it allows you to remain untouchable in a certain regard, and it's helped me tremendously since the first album onto this one.
So you mentioned, in the setup to The Needle's Eye before we played it, that you had read about Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that was the Tilly Olsen book.
The Virginia Woolf?
Yeah, that she was in the Tilly Olsen book.
She is featured. Tilly does write about her, but I had been reading A Room of One's Own. I read, just biography of her life and her childhood. But Tilly Olsen, I actually came across when I was in college, and I saw them talking about her. There's a documentary on Tilly on Democracy Now!, and I fell in love with her, and I just started writing about Tilly. Her book Silences talks about how difficult it's been for women historically to create, to become authors, to become painters and poets and musicians, due to the way that we're socialized, that women, our whole lives are often arrayed in a way that we're supposed to take care of other people. We put other people first. And Tilly was referring to these silences that appear in women's lives where we cannot create because we don't have the support or the infrastructure in place to create, to put ourselves first. And how she wonders, how many women were artists, how many women were, creators that never had a chance to produce because of the nature of their lives.
If you want to search for that book, Tilly is spelled Tillie, and Olsen is Olsen. Mm-hmm. And the book is Silences, and it's where you took the name of the album from.
Right.
You speak really eloquently to, being black, being a woman. Came across one sort of distinction that you drew about your own songwriting that I thought was really interesting, and I'm paraphrasing wildly, but essentially you are a witness, not a preacher.
Right.
And so these songs are not, they're not hammering people over the head.
Right. No, I grew up in the church, and I sat in a congregation every Saturday for the first 12 years of my life, and I can pinpoint the weaknesses of a preacher. I'd much rather be a witness. I don't offer people salvation. I don't offer people a false sense of hope. I don't offer people self-love or self-celebration or any of that. I bear witness. I will walk alongside of you and say, yeah, this is bizarre. This is crazy. I will provide space and a judgment-free zone for you to be flawed and human and grotesque and strange and bizarre. But I can't promise you that in the end any of this will be worth it.
You're so verbal and so intentional about what you do. And I went back and I listened to the first interview that we did.
Right.
And I thought you were just so golden through that whole interview. But when I listened to it, I thought, well, I don't know that people are getting the complete picture of who you are, because we talk about the simplicity of the record. We talk about the songwriting being about the struggles that, you've seen, the struggles that you've faced. And, at a certain level, this is all incredibly true, but it's also a really good thing to listen to in the car when you're going fast.
Mm-hmm. You're running from somewhere, running to something.
Yeah, but
on the go.
It's just a good sounding record. It's got tempo and it's fun, and it's a great listen.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work.
Thank you.
So, I know that you've got sound check, and we're going to have to let you go, but I did want to play. This is actually one of the most played songs of the last year on the bridge, Different Kind of Love. And it really helped me take my appreciation of the song to another level when I read what was behind that song as well.
Right. So, yeah, this was another self-therapy session, this song, of getting dumped, rather unceremoniously, by a young man and having that really mess with my world, like really, scramble me. And I looked at how I put myself out there to be approved and to be loved. And then I looked at my life in wider in general, like me putting myself out into the world and waiting for the world to like me, to accept me. And at the end, like, I just had to say, like, between the world and me, what will it be? Who do you love? And that's me asking myself, like, who are you going to trust? Who are you going to put your stock in? Is it going to be the world, or are you going to just love your damn self?
Yeah. Pretty great.
Thank you.
The new album is Silences. It's on Atlantic Records. You can find out more about her at adiavictoria.com. And the show tonight at the Record Bar, I would love for people to be turned away at the door at this show tonight. I would love to see Kansas City really turn out. Adia Victoria, one of our core and favorite artists here at the Bridge. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.